We are in the midst of opposing forces, headwinds and tailwinds occurring simultaneously. The tailwinds that help propel us come from the broad recognition now that global temperatures have warmed as a result of the accumulation of carbon in the atmosphere. The scientific community largely agrees that this is causing what is known as the greenhouse effect, or the trapping of the sun's heat, which otherwise would have escaped had the carbon not been so highly concentrated in our atmosphere. As a result of this, there have been dramatic shifts in some parts of the world where renewable energy has been prioritized. This is positive for our business and augurs well for our future prospects. According to the World Bank, for the first time in history in 2015, the $170 billion invested in renewable energy outstripped the $110 billion invested in coal and natural gas. This trend is expected to continue as the costs of solar and wind go down. However, there are headwinds from the collapse in the prices of coal and oil over the last 36 months. As some parts of the world increasingly shun carbon in general, and more specifically coal, here in the Philippine market there is an apparent preference of the country for coal, given what I call its artificially low prices. I emphasize the word artificial because coal plants have many hidden costs or externalities, including the damage to the environment and the ill effects on the health of the community. Professors Paul Epstein and Jonathan Bonocore of Harvard estimate this to be in the range of 9.4 to 26.9 US cents per kilowatt hour, or translated into Philippine pesos, 4 pesos and 30 centavos to 12.40 per kilowatt hour in the USA. In this context, our main line of business, geothermal, is challenged by coal, given the baseload versus baseload pricing comparison that ignores the externalities. In 2015 alone, we reduced prices to our customers in response to significant competitive forces, resulting in a substantial loss of margin at a time when our assets require capex for upgrades to make them more resilient against typhoons. We have had to reduce prices again in 2016. It is against this backdrop that I am making my report to you this year. On the operational side, we have 7 assets in our portfolio, and I will report on wind and solar separately later. For our geothermal assets, we achieved higher reliability factors last year, ranging from 84% for our unified Leyte power plants to as high as 99.4% for our Palinpinon 2 power plants. The newly rehabilitated Bacman 1 also attained 98% reliability factor, second highest in our fleet. Mount Apo 1 and 2 and Palimpinon 1 also hit the 90, 91, and 97% marks, respectively. While the company's revenues increased by 11% to 34.4 billion in 2015, our recurring net income attributable to equity holders of parent went down 4% to 8.8 billion. The increase in revenues is attributable to the first full year of operations in 2015 of the newly rehabilitated and upgraded 140 megawatt Bacman power plant and the 49.4 megawatt Nasulo plant, which contributed 4.2 billion and 1.3 billion in revenues respectively. However, higher operating expenses at our Leyte geothermal power plants, including typhoon-proofing investments in Bacman and Leyte, eroded our margins. Insurance premiums increased significantly from 234 million to 682 million due to previous equipment damage and business interruption claims from super typhoons Yolanda and Pablo and Dante. Foreign exchange losses also contributed to this year's reduction in net income. Despite these challenges, EDC remains focused on its vision to become a global leader in geothermal energy and its desire to strengthen its leadership in renewable energy in the Philippines. In pursuit of this vision, I'd like to sum up the year's performance by underlying the 3 key strategic areas that we focused on and that we need to navigate these challenging times. First, investing to improve the performance of our geothermal generating assets. Second, diversifying our renewable energy portfolio. And third, applying optimal technology to our business. With the exception of Bachmann, EDC's assets are at midlife and require CapEx investments to maintain reliability levels. These investments are expected of prudently operated facilities. Investing in our operations is what we call a front domino, something that needs immediate focus and action. Unplanned outages contributed about 1.5 billion in foregone revenues in 2015, and as we invest in our facilities, these losses should be a thing of the past. Strengthening our existing assets is a necessary and strategic investment for EDC. Both the impact of climate-related hazards and the geography of our project sites have made us more vulnerable, particularly to typhoons. We completed several typhoon-proofing projects this year, particularly the installation of the new typhoon-resistant cooling towers in both Bachmann and Leyte, which have been custom designed to withstand wind speeds of up to 300 kilometers per hour. All the other planned improvements in the control rooms and buildings were also completed and are expected to mitigate operating risks significantly. On top of these measures, we have on hand now cooling tower spares to restore the assets should another Yolanda happen, because we simply don't want to take any more chances. To improve plant reliability and site resiliency, we are employing engineering solutions such as improvements in the metallurgy of our turbine rotors and blades and using advanced stress relief methods in manufacturing. We are also retrofitting and upgrading our geothermal power plants. The 4.3 billion Tongonan power plant rehab is now on its second and final phase, with the largest cost components already contracted with Siemens and Mitsubishi. We are looking forward to the full rehabilitation and retrofitting of the Tongonan units starting in the third quarter of this year, and all work should be done by the first half of 2017. Second, diversifying our portfolio is key to spreading our risk and building a complementary CapEx deployment model among the different renewable energy technologies. We continue to grow through our technology and global diversification as we focus solely on the use of low to no carbon sources. With the successful construction and operation of the 150 megawatt Burgos Wind Project in Ilocos Norte and the 4 megawatt Burgos Solar Power Plant, we now have two forms of renewable energy on one site, simultaneously generating power and earning revenues under the government's feed-in tariff system. On April 13, 2015, the Energy Regulatory Commission, or ERC, issued a Certificate of Compliance, or COC, for Burgos Wind, granting the wind farm the FIT rate of 853 per kilowatt hour from November 11, 2014 to November 10, 2034. For the first 9 months of 2015, however, it was subjected to a grid constraint that limited the dispatch of the wind farms in Ilocos Norte, including our Burgos project. This constraint was finally lifted in end September when the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP, commissioned its new Lawag San Esteban transmission line. We lost 85 gigawatt hours in production, or approximately 721 million pesos in revenues. As a result, Burgos Wind contributed only 2.35 billion in revenues versus the 3 billion expected. Internationally lauded, Burgos Wind reaped 7 awards and citations in 2015. It was also conferred a citation by Project Finance International on the basis of the timely construction, cost control, economic importance of the asset, and the challenging location of the construction site, where EDC was the only wind project cited globally and the only one from the Philippines. Burgos today remains the largest wind project in the country. The Burgos Solar Project is EDC's first venture into solar power, contributing 49.3 million of revenues in 2015. The ERC issued a COC for the 4.16 megawatt Burgos Solar 1 with a fit rate of 968 per kilowatt hour from March 5, 2015 to March 4, 2035. Following the successful execution of Burgos Solar 1, we had issued notice to proceed last September for the 2.66 megawatt Burgos Solar 2 project. The project was commissioned in January 2016. We are committed to expanding our geothermal business overseas in our concession areas in Chile, Indonesia, and Peru. In Mariposa, Chile, we deferred the exploration drilling campaign due to the global market downturn in 2015, resulting in difficulty in securing offtake agreements with a viable tariff. We remain intent, however, on pursuing our growth project in Latin America as we continuously work together with the local regulators to guide geothermal policy development. Locally, we similarly put on hold the Bacman 3 project due to challenging market conditions. However, we will continue to invest time and resources to develop geothermal, wind, and solar assets and commercialize these as the opportunities arise. There is significant work to be done with the regulators and legislators in the country to make them recognize that geothermal needs to be prioritized. At the signing of the Paris Climate Agreement in New York City last April 22, the Philippines committed a 70% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030 when compared to business as usual. To achieve this, priority has to be given to geothermal, which is the only source of baseload renewable energy in the country. Solar and wind are intermittent and operate at ranges of 11 to 27% for solar and 20 to 40% for wind in a year. Geothermal, on the other hand, can achieve a 96% capacity factor and is truly capable of baseload operations, as it has proven over the years. Future geothermal at today's coal and oil prices will require a modest feed-in tariff, nowhere near where wind and solar are today, but in reality is significantly cheaper when the costs of intermittency and seasonality are factored in. For example, solar can lose up to 85% of its generation with a 3-second shade event. When a large source of supply drops off quickly, the very stability of the grid is at risk. The way this is addressed now is that National Grid purchases ancillary services like load following and frequency regulation energy from plants that are already running and can kick in to cover for the intermittency in real time. However, ancillary services do add cost. And in sharp contrast to that, geothermal is a 24/7 producer of clean energy and does not require incremental costs because it is neither seasonal nor intermittent. Let me just go drill down a little bit deeper on this. The three categories of intermittent renewable energy integration costs are as follows. The first one is adequacy costs, or the costs of ensuring that the power system has sufficient capacity to meet its loads. The second are balancing costs, or the costs of ensuring that the power system can respond flexibly to demand and supply changes at any given time. And the third is interconnection costs, or the costs of linking sources of supply to demand. These together are estimated by the International Energy Agency, or IEA, to vary approximately in sum from 1.1 to 1.7 US cents per kilowatt hour in the EU and 1.3 to 1.9 US cents per kilowatt hour in the USA. Translating these intermittency costs to Philippine peso terms would result in additional costs of 60 to 90 centavos per kilowatt hour on top of the wind and solar feed-in tariffs, or about 9.43 for wind and about 8.56 for solar. If geothermal will be apportioned a rate, that is 40 to 45% below these fit rates, then it would spark a renaissance of geothermal in the Philippines. The third imperative is using optimal innovation and technology. We believe that using innovation and technology to address our most significant and pressing issues will be the key drivers that will take our core geothermal business to the next level. As early as 6 years ago, we instructed our geoscientists and drilling and power plant engineers to be more open to new ideas and more innovative. We are pleased with the progress made to date in testing and using appropriate technologies to achieve more effective and efficient operations. However, we realize that we have barely scratched the surface and we have a long, long way to go. Let me cite a few examples. After Super Typhoon Yolanda totally damaged our cooling towers, we asked our suppliers to custom engineer and design our equipment to withstand wind speeds of up to 300 kilometers per hour. Aside from changing the fan stack manufacturing technology from what was known as the spray layup method to the resin transfer molding process, we also changed all cooling tower fan drive shafts from steel to carbon fiber. Both changes have resulted in power plants that are significantly stronger, but also flex with the extreme pressure of the winds. They are lightweight, sturdier, and corrosion resistant, and should be cheaper to maintain in the long run. For both steam field and power plant operations, we have collaborated extensively with international industry giants, resulting in improved reliability factors and longer life cycle of our geothermal assets. For Upper Mahiao power plant, for example, we are now using OEM-designed steam turbine rotors with new metallurgy from 0.5% chrome to 12% chrome, and we've also introduced nickel. This type of metallurgy is only used in supercritical and ultra-supercritical steam turbines and are being applied to geothermal for the first time. With this, we can better withstand stress corrosion cracking as well as sustain performance with less degradation in between maintenance inspections. Upper Mahiao outages cost us 100 million of foregone revenues last year, and this year have cost us already about 50 million. Later this year, the new rotors with the new metallurgy will be arriving and installed to reduce and eliminate downtime in Upper Mahiao. For our pentane feed pumps, we have also collaborated with 2 manufacturers to re-engineer legacy designs from 5 to 4 stage to reduce power consumption and maintenance cost. We have tapped 2 other suppliers to upgrade the metallurgy of our pump casings and other components of the hot well pumps to further reduce maintenance costs, sustain performance and improvement of the equipment, as well as reliability and longevity. For drilling operations, we have reduced drilling costs by 17%, despite the more challenging conditions present, and this has resulted in 42 million per well savings to date. This was mainly due to higher penetration rates as a result of improved drilling technologies, such as the use of custom-designed drill bits per site, downhole mud motors, and aerated drilling fluids. The cost of drilling new wells and maintaining existing ones have also significantly been reduced after we changed well designs to include what is known as tieback completions and implemented the use of surface boring machines to do the first 200 meters, or what we call the top hole. The top holing alone has reduced costs by an additional 10 million per well compared to the use of a conventional drilling rig. However, given the intense and sustained challenges that we expect going forward, we will channel significant resources towards aggressively searching for technologies and tools that will address our most pressing problems and further reduce our costs and risk. This will take time and determination, but it also happens at the precise moment that technologies like the Internet of Things, or IoT meters and measuring devices, have come down in cost and have become ubiquitous, and advanced analytics are becoming more available, particularly in the energy industry. We will push very, very hard in this direction going forward. I'd like to conclude by saying there's a bright spot on the horizon. Worldwide, countries, policymakers, legislatures, local governments, companies, banks, pension funds, developers, NGOs, and individuals are making the choice to go low or no carbon. Large financial institutions such as World Bank and CalPERS have said that they will stop funding coal projects. The RE100, composed of 100 of the most influential brands in the world, have committed to shifting 100% to renewable energy by 2020. ENGIE, one of the largest energy companies with about 117 gigawatts of power in its fleet, has begun to divest all of its coal investments. Various governments around the world have also made serious commitments to go low or no carbon by shifting to renewable energy in the coming years. Hawaii has set an ambitious target of sourcing 100% of its electrical energy from renewable energy sources by 2045, and they are coming from 97% fossil fuels today. The UK announced that it will get rid of all of its coal by 2025. China announced that it will start a carbon market in 2017 and price carbon by 2020. Chile, which is 50% dependent on hydrocarbons today, has declared an ambitious commitment of having 70% clean energy in its mix by 2050, despite a robust growing GDP. Being a country that is situated along the Pacific Ring of Fire, Chile will benefit from geothermal energy that provides clean and renewable baseload power. Geothermal will enable Chile to meet its commitments, and EDC is well positioned for this new world. While our policymakers have taken limited steps to move in a similar direction thus far, EDC needs to help fill a gap that will raise awareness and generate positive policy changes. We recognize that we need to be the voice leading in this debate and advocacy. The past year has had its challenges, but they also helped sharpen our focus on what matters as the business transforms, grows, and sheds some fat. Ingrained in our core values and principles and working closely together with all stakeholders, EDC will become the national and global benchmark for sustainable practices in renewable power generation as we work to grow the business on a global scale and lead the way in paving the path for a low-carbon future. On behalf of our board, I'd like to thank all of our employees for demonstrating their solidarity with the company and for the hard work they've rendered. I'd like to thank our customers for their firm belief in EDC and our shareholders and other stakeholders whose trust and support we count on. I hope that collectively we can hold both ourselves and our government accountable to the climate commitments made in Paris at COP21. This is our obligation not only to our generation, but to future generations. Thank you and good morning.